Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to you lovely folks joining me here nice and early at Marvel Snap Zone. Welcome back for another weekly installment of Infinite Decks of the Week, a series where we take a look at some of the decks that have been shared with us in our community Discord, on Twitter, on our comments section, on YouTube, even sometimes on the comments of our articles on the website, and show you some of our favourites this week that have made it to Infinite. Just before we start getting into that this week, if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Would love to see you for more Marvel Snap Zone content in the future. And I also wanted to share something with you as well to do with our Marvel Snap Zone tracker. You'll see on screen right now a couple images that I'll break down for you. If you haven't noticed the tracker before, well, it is now available for you to download for PC use only at this moment in time to track your data, track your decks, track your games, track your collection, all that kind of wonderful jazz you could possibly want. But recently it has started to track data for us to use in a tier list where we can actually start breaking down what meta games look like regardless of collection level. So if you're looking for the best decks from Series 1 cards only, the best decks from Series 3 cards only, the best decks overall, everything, Series 4, Series 5, you can now use filters on the tracker to show you win rate, show you cube averages, all that kind of wonderful jazz, and get an idea of what the metagame looks like around you. So if you haven't already, please do consider installing the tracker, as it's the kind of data we're going to be using going forward to kind of do metagame breakdowns and stuff like this, so every person using it helps us out in making a more accurate image for what the game actually looks like. So with that all said and done, we are going to be going over to Infinite Decks of the Week this week, and this article is going to be a little shade different this time. We're still celebrating successes, we're still showcasing some of the decks that have made it to Infinite this week, but if you follow the Marvel Snap community on social media recently, you might very well notice that Marvel Snap is becoming significantly more of a mainstream game with way more uptake as we go forward. A lot of people playing it, a lot of people following it, and even having more opinions than before on what is good and what isn't. Mainly, we're starting to see some words that only exist in the popular card games on the market, such as problem cards, come to fruition. So why is that? A problem card simply is one that is apparently kind of bad for the game, worsening the play experience, leading to people spending less time actually playing Marvel Snap. Logically, those are the cards that we expect to be changed as to reduce their impact on the game and their popularity. Most of the time, a problem card will be among the most powerful cards the game has to offer, either defining a deck or being versatile enough to see play in many different decks. And as time passes, the card will become more popular, and with it, more frustrating, as it will be in more and more games, and the snowball just kind of continues and continues until something is done to address it. In Marvel Snap's short history, we've already had some problem cards in the past. Would you believe that at one point in time, Moon Girl was a 3-cost, 3-power card? Nova gave +2 to all the other cards on the field when it was destroyed, and at one point Mr. Negative was even a 4-cost, 4-power card. All of these cards were heavily nerfed to align with the average power of a card inside the game, and are still played to this day, while not being considered busted anymore. Today, we're going to like to draw some discussions and just kind of have a civil discussion, I guess, about some problem cards in the current metagame, as they appear to be in many decks that have reached the Infinite rank this week on a daily basis. And we're going to take a look at these cards and how they contribute to those decks in order to explain why those cards maybe are a problem or may potentially become one in the future. This, however, definitely shouldn't just kind of deter us or prevent us from celebrating the accomplishment of players who have made it to Infinite this week and the highest rank in the game. So congratulations to everyone who has their deck showcased in the series, and congratulations to all of you who have made Infinite this week in the process. With all that said, we are going to head on over and take a look at our first list this week over in the Marvel Snap client. This time round, we're going to start looking at a more traditional Serra deck. This one kind of caught my interest when I viewed the original article here from the lovely Den CCG. Turns out, Serra, still a crazy good card. Serra was part of the last set of nerfs alongside Angela and Mysterio. All three of those are cards that are still in this deck. Basically, the last problem cards, if you will. Apparently, Diaple Sticks, I'm so bad with usernames, good lord. They didn't get the memo, they just didn't hear about this and still cruised Infinite this week with this very traditional take on Serra Miracle, the control build, if you will. Most of the time, Magic was a card that was included in this deck as a way to get 7 energy, allowing for a Shang-Chi or Enchantress plus Killmonger in case we wouldn't find Serra on the final turn. Cosmo also can be a consideration in a strategy like this at this point, with all the on-reveal effects that are roaming around in popular decks. However, the reason Den chose to highlight this deck this week is because it's proof that nerfing and killing a card completely are two very different things. We have 3 of the last 4 nerfs in this deck, and it still works just fine. Serra Control makes a lot of sense in the current metagame. The optimal way of playing Marvel Snap right now for many people is to seize priority early on. It's becoming a more important thing than ever, and it makes a lot of cards much, much stronger. For example, one of the most popular cards in the game, Aero, is so much better when the opponent's cards reveal after they were moved compared to before they're moved. The same goes for Armor or Cosmo, which can deny cards played on the turn compared to the next one if you're revealing first. With Sarah Miracle, we're fine leaving priority to our opponent most of the time, as our key cards want the opponent to reveal first anyway. Shang-Chi, Enchantress, Killmonger mostly are fine with the opponent revealing first, as it potentially gives us more targets to counter or interact with. As a result, we really like the idea behind this deck right now, and thought it was a great metagame pick when everyone else is fighting for priority. Up next, we're going to look at possibly the most controversial card in Marvel Snap right now, and I do not mean Leader, I mean Galactus. If you missed it yesterday, we put out a video referencing one of Ben Brode's most recent tweets, saying that Galactus is currently on the watch list as a card that might be a bit problematic, and funnily enough, we found this deck soon after that tweet went live. It features at least 3 cards that are arguably, potentially, more nerf-worthy than the new Series 5 card in our opinion. Death, obviously, is a card that routinely comes back in the nerf discussion every single time it happens, and with Lamentis 1 being a featured location recently, Galactus being a new ally, she was naturally the target of many, many criticisms. Personally, I don't mind Death in her current form, as both her and Galactus power kind of stems on another card that I think is arguably maybe a bit more problematic in the form of Wave. Wave is probably the best Season Pass card ever, maybe Silver Surfer has a fight to pick about that. Wave enables a lot of otherwise impossible play patterns in Marvel Snap. This usually ends up being the start of the deck based on any kind of synergy around Death, Moon Girl, even things like Galactus in this case. It's kind of a show stealer in the destroy archetypes like Death Wave, kind of named as such because of how good that duo is. Wave is now included alongside Psylocke and Electro in a number of ramp-based strategies based around Leech and Leader, and again proves to be an all-star in those strategies, enabling play patterns that just cannot happen otherwise. If Electro on turn 3 is the strongest thing this deck can do, the deck's biggest high roll is definitely Wave into Galactus on 3 and 4. Indeed, with Galactus coming down on turn 4 instead of turn 5 from Electro, the flexibility to build in the now sole lane of the match is much, much improved. We can now think about passing on turn 5 to play an Infernaut on turn 6. We can play a big card on turn 5, such as Death or Doc Ock, and Taskmaster on turn 6. We can even leave reveal priority to the opponent to land Shang-Chi on turn 6. These are patterns that for this precise deck exactly, and don't get me started if we had a card like Spider-Man in this build as well. Really cool stuff this week from Royce-like Rolls, showcasing what you can do with Galactus right now. Up next, we have a list from user Das Danka. This one is very much titled in the article below, "Just play the good cards" with this Devil Dino list. Das Danka actually reached out to Den directly on Discord to share this deck and some more information about their Infinite Climb this week. And it perfectly fits into today's discussion. Indeed, it might be actually the best deck representing the metagame all round currently. Good cards, big points, disruptive potential. 3 very key concepts to what the metagame might look like currently. While the Devil Dino shell appears to be the best to welcome in this kind of package of Aero and Leader that is currently terrorizing the ladder, you can find them in many other decks as well. The concept is really simple. If you're ahead on turn 5, it should be very, very hard for you to lose the game on turn 6. With Aero, you can control where the opponent's going to play, either onto a lane you know is yours already, or, you know, that they can't take back, or the opposite, a lane that you know you've given up on, and that you no longer intend on trying to win, and the points there will not help them. Leader on 6 should match the opposing turn, and there you have it. The lead built during the first 4 turns will stay put, and you win the game by copying over everything your opponent plays, knowing that you have space. In the same logic, Maximus is actually a key card in this deck currently. In fact, Das Danka believes it's one of the best 3 cards in the game right now that no one is talking about in the form of Maximus. It's a key card. The opponent's cards that will, you know, kind of decide what we can do in exchange for a priority that is game-defining currently. We don't really care how many cards they have in hand and how many options they have, given that we intend on copying them all on the last turn of the game anyway. It simply matters that heading into that turn, we have priority with cards like Aero. While this deck runs more versatile cards like Daredevil and Scarlet Witch, you can often see Lizard in a list like this as well for a very similar purpose to Maximus, just making sure that you're the one who has priority going into those important turns. Dastanka actually wrote an entire thread about this deck with tons more information about it. So if you're interested, go and give the article in the description box below a click and go and check it out for yourself, and you can find out some more information about this one if you like. The last deck of Infinite Decks of the Week this week is very much asking the question of, can we just play Leader absolutely everywhere? While I don't necessarily share the popular opinion that Leader should be heavily nerfed, I do think there's a good chance it needs to be adjusted slightly, but Den, who wrote this article, believes that the card is a product of the current metagame being pushed by cards like Aero and Death's popularity more than being too strong. It's pretty undeniable in my opinion, however, that Leader fits part of the description of a problem card currently that has at least, two of the key traits. It's exceptionally popular and it limits the space players have to make their plays on turn 6. And that's the reason why we wanted to highlight this deck in particular this week. It shows Leader is apparently playable in a lot of decks, even ones without the usual suspects of how to seize priority early on. Here the big scoring cards don't really come until turn 4, and even have to wait until turn 5 sometimes to reach their full potential. As a result, the creator of this deck, Slay the Squire, decided to keep turn 5 very flexible, with a card like Captain Marvel being the go-to card, and still have Leader in case no counter card like Shang-Chi or Killmonger will do the trick in a pinch. Coming back to Captain Marvel, I actually really like that card right now in a metagame that is dominated by Aero, as she doesn't really care where she gets played. We started using Claw in some decks on stream recently for a similar reason, and both cards seem to fit the bill in decks that aren't actively working to gain a priority on turn 5. Depending on how you see it, the current metagame is either a pain or a great opportunity to innovate and take your metagame reading skills to another level. I think we have to go back to early September to have a metagame that was really about a clear mechanic in the game. Then Sarah Negative emerged for the first time and took over until players started to use Sandman to try and counter that. With new cards still able to make an impact, as we are far from collecting them all just yet, it's difficult to know if a balance patch is in the air before 2023 and whether we'll have a new meta before the new year. With a new card every week, both Darkhawk and Sentry are due for release on December 20th. Second Dinner might believe there are enough shakeups in store to not have to pull the trigger just yet. At the very least, we can see that players managed to reach the infinite rank with a various selection of strategies and decks this week, and so there's definitely room to be creative and find an edge over the competition. The second week of the season is also packed in terms of players reaching the highest rank, usually showcasing more decks than the very best ones used during week 1. As usual, if you want to have a discussion about the current state of the metagame, what you think about a video like this, or your recent accomplishments in general, you can reach out in our community Discord, which you can find in the description box down below. Tag us on Twitter at Marvel Snap Zone, or come and chat with me or Den CCG directly at Howling Minds or Den CCG. But for now, that has been our Infinite Decks of the Week video this time. I have been Howling Minds. You have been amazing, and this has been Marvel Snap Zone. Take care of yourself. Have a good one.